Welcome back to the next chapter of Greentech.LIVE. Thank you very much for your warm regards, Frau Hofmeister-Kraut. We totally appreciate your support here. We switched languages to English since we have a guest, an international guest, and he's he is at the forefront of circular economy. So we'll greet Miquel, one of the co-founders and engineers behind the Fairphone. Miquel, can you hear us?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Where are you today? Amsterdam, Barcelona, or?
No, we are headquartered in Amsterdam, indeed. Yeah.
In Amsterdam. It's a real pleasure having you. And as I said, I think you really are one of the pioneers of this industry. And I hope a lot of people are actually, or more and more people are actually using Fairphones and fair-traded electronics.
Thanks.
Do you have a present? Yeah. Sorry?
Yeah, I have a presentation. Just give me 1 second. I'll pull it off. I hope you guys can see it. 1 second. Is that visible to you?
Perfect. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So, Miquel, your stage, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. So I believe I have around half an hour, including questions. So I'll try to rush through my slides because I prefer to get into a conversation. So maybe I go a little bit fast in some of my slides, but please don't hesitate to write down your question.
Yes. In times of time. We reckon like 20 minutes for your presentation would be okay, and then we have 10 minutes for Q&A, okay?
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so as you said, I am Miquel Ballester. I'm the head of product management at the moment at Fairphone and one of the co-founders. And yeah, I have the pleasure to present to you actually the work of many people here. We are today an organization of 140 people spread a little bit over the world, but most of us in Amsterdam, but we also have teams in Taipei, in China, and in other countries in Africa as well. But let me just get into it. I'll tell you a little bit more about Fairphone, if this works. Just 1 second. Okay. So Fairphone started back in 2010, actually, as an awareness campaign. This was an awareness campaign in an organization here in Amsterdam that was looking for the social relevance of technology, very much working with the public sector. Within that organization, Bas van Ouwel, which is also the founder of Fairphone, asked himself the question like, what is behind all this technology that we buy every day? What are the materials that are used in this technology? And what are the stories in this supply chain that we need to change, actually? Because he had heard about all these different and complex issues in the supply chain of electronics, and he wanted to do something good to change it. So with that spirit, with that creative and open and collaborative spirit, started Fairphone as an awareness campaign. I joined him 1 year later, and then together we transformed Fairphone from an awareness campaign into a social enterprise in 2013 with the same mission as from the beginning, but really getting our hands dirty in the industry, trying to, put fair products into the market. Our mission today, very simple. Actually, we want to change the whole industry. And we think now since 2013, we think the best way to do that is by establishing a market for ethical electronics to show both supply and demand what is possible and what can be made available so that we can motivate the rest of the industry to act more responsibly. We have actually a very simple theory of change. So, as I said, we started already raising awareness, and that's something that we continuously doing as a company also today. That's the first pillar, raise awareness about the issues and the things that need to change in the industry and in the supply chain. When that awareness is raised, then we have to have something tangible. So we have to set an example. We have to have a project in place that can show how things can be done differently. But that's not the end. With that project, with that inception of concept, we need to be able to motivate the industry. So very often we create projects where other players of the industry are also part of, or that they can replicate. And I'll get into some examples today. We focus on four areas, content areas. I won't get too much into detail because I think like in this conference, you as an audience are very aware of what are some of the issues behind the electronics industry, but it's also four pillars. So a lot on fair mining and getting fair materials. I'll explain a little bit more about that. Workers' welfare, also taking that to the next stage and in a little bit more human-centered approach. Longevity with our modular devices, long-lasting design and long-term support of software, and recycling at the end, where we also have some interesting projects there on urban mining, getting mobile phones from countries where there's no recycling infrastructure. I'll move on. I'll skip these two slides because I'm sure you know about this. So electronics being the fastest growing waste stream in the world, and some of the other problems that we associate with people and planet, frankly, in many industries, but that is especially difficult and important in the electronics industry, where it is with people all around the supply chain. So in manufacturing sites, but also at mining sites where we get our materials, and planet all over the chain, but also at the end where we have, a lot of e-waste. I want to give you a little bit more a view of how we do it, because I think that's more interesting for you. Like, how do we actually make that vision and mission like into everyday practice and everyday business in the end, because we are a social enterprise, but we are a social enterprise for profit. So we reinvest our profit in our projects, and that's how we run the machine. What is very important for us is our KPI. So what you see on the slide on the top is our mission. And then we have mainly 6 KPIs, 7 if you take net financial results as well. And then from these KPIs, 4 of them, actually 5 of them, if we include also KPI 6, have to do with either social and environmental performance in the industry or about changing the industry itself. We have outcome KPIs, which is kind of the more operational KPIs. So these are broken down into sub KPIs, of course, and we have KPIs on longevity and KPIs on e-waste neutrality, fair materials, fair factories, which is our decent work agenda, and industry influence score, which is a way for us to calculate what is the impact that we have on other companies and how many companies follow some of our examples. And this translates then in some impact KPIs. So, of course, we measure the e-waste that we avoid and the CO2 that we avoid and how many people benefit from from the projects that we put into place. All this, by the way, is very well explained in our impact report, which I have to say every year improves. The last version in 2021 is very thorough and very explanatory. So if you're interested into some more of the details about how to turn this operational, I definitely recommend you to read our 2021 impact report, which is, I just added like a small screenshot on the left hand side. If you Google it, you will find it, and that's the front page, so that you recognize the file. Moving on, I'll explain you a little bit the four core impact categories. So on fair materials, I think what I would like you to understand is our approach to it. Of course, we know the industry is moving to the circular economy, and we have to accelerate that. We need to be able to move faster to a circular economy. But what we say is that we need to move to a fair circular economy, and we need to plan a fair transition to the circular economy. We cannot just turn our eyes now to 100% recycled and let's say ignore the fact that transition to 100% recycled will take a while, and that for some materials, and every material is a different story, but for some materials, the supply of recycled materials, is what it says on the slides, is not able to meet the growing demand. So as of today, we're still growing too fast to be sure that there's enough recycled materials to cover for that need. And so that means that the mining sector is still a source of these materials. Let's take cobalt as an example, and very important. And that's why we need to keep on working on making sure that the mining sector has fair working conditions for both large scale mining, but also for artisanal mining, which is so important for example, the cobalt supply chain, and cobalt is so important for our energy transition future. So transition to a fair circular economy. As I said, like every material is a bit of a different story. We develop projects around 40 materials, which are the 40 materials that we studied are the ones that require the fastest and biggest action, where we see most social environmental risks, I was going to say, but not risk, but actually things that are going wrong. There's also a document if you are interested. So that's our Fair Material Sourcing Roadmap 2023, where we explained for each of these materials, there's a very long study on more than 40 materials, 40 metals that are contained in electronics. In our case, a smartphone, but of course they are the same for many other electronics. And we put that also in this document, in the Fair Material Sourcing Roadmap, to explain for what materials we think like it's better to go for as recycled as possible, and for what materials we think it's better to support some initiatives that are already doing the right thing to change that mining sector. So all that also in there. If we move on to decent work, maybe a little bit more away from that concept of green tech, but very important for us. So we have a very holistic view of what sustainability should mean in the electronics industry, and of course, decent work is key in this agenda. Our vision for decent work is that people should have a decent life with sufficient income, and their voice should be heard. This is the basis. Because we believe that basis enables much more than the typical checkbox kind of culture that we've had in the past with social compliance in factories. Here a little bit is like where we try to move the level of maturity of some of our strategic suppliers all the way to the top. So our phones, like Fairphone 4, for example, now is TCO certified and Blue Angel certified. We are very glad of having achieved these eco labels, and we think like they do fulfill like a very important role in the market as well, in making consumers aware of what sustainability means in electronics and why it's important. So really, really happy to having been able to achieve those eco labels. But we want to take things a little bit further. So we don't want to stop at health and safety compliance, but really go beyond that to work on worker satisfaction improvement. So that's the human center that I was talking about in the beginning. So really through surveys and through understanding what is the real situation of workers in each of the of our key suppliers, and plan improvements for that. For the last step, which is really assure that for every worker their voice is heard. So that can be by means of free elections to choose their workers' representatives, and living wage programs, which is something that we've made big steps in the last years. So in 2019, we were, as far as we know, the first electronics company to support living wages in the supply chain. And this is, maybe some of you know already, but this is not just as simple as saying, oh, we will pay more for our products. So actually, it took a long process of engagement with, in this case, 2 of our key suppliers to make sure that the process and the framework was in place to be able to pay that gap between what is now the minimum wage, which is normally what assembly workers get, and the living wage of that specific area on that specific place in China, very often, or in the case of these 2 suppliers. We wrote all this down in a white paper, also published, and I think we published in 2020, I think it was. It's on our website, also a wonderful read if you want to understand what is the process that you can take with suppliers to get to that living wage framework. This is stolen from our impact report again. So I just actually made a screenshot because I thought that was the best way we could have to represent some of the results of the impacts of the living wage bonus payments. So as of 2021, last year, so more than 1,800 workers benefited from this extra payment. It was, in our case, a total of $166,000. This is important to say. This goes directly to increase the assembly workers' salaries. With the current framework, that means up to 1 month extra salary in that year, in 2021. And so also, if you see on the right for Fairphone 3, so that's our previous device, that meant around 1.85 US dollars per phone, and Fairphone 4, that was 199. This is extra costs on our, let's say, material, like cost of the product. Of course, that turns maybe a bit different in terms of like what is the total cost that it requires in your company. But we think like these are totally assumable costs for any company in order to assure a living wage. But we don't stop there. And this is also to say about the motivating of the rest of the industry. We saw the opportunity to also advocate with this program to the European Union. So there was, I don't know if you know, but this corporate sustainability due diligence directive is now, being considered and being read and being very hardly lobbied by some companies. So we wanted to come in with a positive message about living wage and about making sure that nothing that had to do with living wage in this directive would be compromised. So it was quite successful. So we managed to achieve 60 different companies and NGOs to actually sign our letter, and was shared with the European Union, and we're waiting for final results. On longevity, maybe the closest topic to, let's say, green electronics, right? So for us, it's a lot of what we do on longevity is basically in two pillars. So it's either long-term software support, so going beyond chipset manufacturer support. So really, like, we have a full team dedicated on software. We call it the software longevity team, and they are fully dedicated on making sure that our older devices keep getting software upgrades. Fairphone 2, to give you an example, was a device that was launched in 2015 and got up to 7 years. So this year is going to be 7 years support. So that's pretty remarkable. And then our products are modular. So they are made up of, easy to repair pieces, because we think that lowering the threshold for repairability is one of the best ways to also keep that device in use. And that has an immediate impact on the total CO2 emissions of that device. Actually, for every product that we have put in the market, and mind, what you have on your screen is Fairphone 3, not Fairphone 4. But okay, the numbers are a little bit similar. What we have seen, and we see over and over, is that if we are able to stretch the use of a device up to 7 years, we can lower the CO2 emissions of that lifetime 45%. So that's huge. And in this 45%, in these scenarios, we include like spare parts that you would need, because we assume some breakages over these 7 years, or we assume extra batteries. So all that is in this LCA. By the way, also completely published on our website, and you can Google it, LCA Fairphone 4, LCA Fairphone 3, LCA Fairphone 2. We have them all. So it's also a good read, and yeah, it's a nice read, maybe a bit nerdy, but I like it. I'm finishing up. I know I don't have much more time. So this is just the view of Fairphone 4. And just to show you some of the modularity. So some modularity actually is more on component level. So it's just easy repairability, you could call it. But I like to highlight from this slide is that we also try to design the internals of our phones a little bit appealing for people, right? Like that people would open that device and don't feel like super alienated from that piece of technology, right? There's some friendliness in the graphics in this design that kind of guides you through the repairability. Of course, we also have a repair center, so we don't expect everybody necessarily to repair their own phone, but we would like that. And we facilitate that with graphics. We facilitate that with documentation that we publish online, and with very easy to follow video tutorials as well. So we hope that we can make people enthusiastic about really understanding how their electronics are built and how they can be repaired. And last but not least, also on recycling, I won't get too much into this one, but we have this e-waste neutral claim on our phone, and we achieve that both with, like, let's say what would be a more classical European take-back program that other companies obviously also do. But also we combine it with take-back from countries where there's no enough recycling infrastructure developed. We do that with partners. We don't do that alone. So Closing the Loop is an important partner there here in the Netherlands. And with all the phones that we recover, then we are able to make this e-waste neutral claim. So collecting a lot of e-waste as well from there. I'll skip this one for the amount of time. Don't like bragging too much, so I'll go on. I think I want to highlight just one more thing here. These are some of the claims that we do in our last product, and I don't want this to feel too marketing. I just want to highlight the 5 years warranty, because I think like that's an important one, and it's an important signal to customers as well. And I think we all as an industry, we should aim for giving longer time warranties, because that's a sign that we also believe and trust the quality of our products, and that we can provide that to customers, and that increases also the trust of customers in keeping their devices longer, and making sure that they understand that repairing makes sense and should be done. So I leave it there just with this question. So what's next? I think it's all up to us to change this industry and to make sometimes big steps, sometimes smaller steps to make it more sustainable. And definitely change is also in your hands. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Miquel.
Happy to take any questions.
Yeah. Of course. This is why we're here. So thank you so much for your presentation. Very inspiring project, and I think you're a very inspiring company as well, because you made it happen, and you inspired a lot of people. At our previous conference, we had a colleague here from Hessen, Carsten with Shift Phones, maybe you know him, and Nirav Patel was here with laptops. They basically are also at the frontiers of circular economy. But Fairphone is the thing people talk about, and as far as I remember, you released the first phone in 2010. Is that correct?
Well, the first one was in 2013, actually.
2013. So I'm curious to learn what happened so far. How many Fairphones are out there, and how popular is it actually? Because in our bubble we talk about it a lot, but is it really out there in the mainstream, or is it just like a small little thing, but it has a great impact, but it's not really like spread out too far?
Yeah, well, I can, maybe easiest is to compare Fairphone 1 with Fairphone 4 to see like the differences. So Fairphone 1, we were a team of 6 people, crazy enough to start this adventure. It was the first phone where all the parts were available online as well, so you could repair it, but it was not modular. It was a very small phone, and with very limited operational capacity internally. Now we are a 140 employees organization. Fairphone 4 is ranged in, I believe, more than 20 telecom operators across Europe. So that means that in many countries you can, walk into a shop of all the telecom operators that we know, the biggest ones, and find the Fairphone there being displayed. That's the case for countries like France or Germany, definitely the Netherlands, UK, Switzerland, like the bigger countries. We are a little bit smaller in South European countries, where I come from actually, but and also we are growing more volume in Nordics now. So it is spreading pretty much, I would say. And you can also see it in our impact report. So our sales are increasing year after year. We're making big steps there. And now with Fairphone 4, we also made a big step technologically. It's our first 5G device, the first device that has some water and dust protection, even though it's a modular device. The first device with 100% recycled plastics on the back cover. So there's a lot of steps that we have done with Fairphone 4. And there will be new news coming up, of course. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think you're not only visionaries, but you're also a company that has to go to the market and to generate revenues. So, don't you see problems when huge companies like Apple or so bring out new models every year or almost every year, and they promote new camera features and all that kind of stuff. How can you catch up with all these competitors?
Do we need to catch up? Would be my question.
I don't know.
So I think like where we are today, I'm not saying we will not grow further. Of course, we need to grow a little bit more. I think for us, it's very important to get to a size where we do matter for all our suppliers. So now we are important customer of some of our key suppliers, but for some other suppliers, we are still a small customer, and that is our goal, right? Because let's not forget our mission. For getting to our mission and being true to our mission and why we exist, we need to be able to shape the supply chain and shape the industry and keep on coming with our examples of things that can be done and keep on convincing other companies that can be done. I don't think it is our role to catch up with the biggest in the market. I don't think it's necessary. I think like we get a lot of PR attention also with the projects that we do, and that's exactly what we want. We are here to change the industry, and we have created a tool to change that industry. So it's not necessary for us to get to 100 million devices a year to achieve that mission. And for me, it's always the question like, maybe they are too big. Maybe we would not need so big companies, and the world will be a little bit different if we don't have so big companies.
I would like to take up on that question. Yeah. I would like to take Wolfgang's question up and expanding it regarding the price point. You are selling a niche product for a target group that is willing to pay a higher price point in comparison to other models with the same specs. Do you plan, or to what extent do you plan, or to what extent will you be able to even lower the prices in order to attract a broader audience? Is that possible, and do you plan this?
But I guess that's a challenge for every company out there, right? Our phone is 579 euros. It's a perfectly fine and capable phone with 5G, with a good camera. Now that we solved all the software things that we still had to solve with Fairphone 4, so now we have a very good camera. It's a computer in your pocket, and it works, and it does everything that other phones do. Of course, we are always striving to, be competitive in the market because that's what we need to do as a company. But it is not our main goal necessarily, right? Like, again, as long as we are able to assure the amount of sales we need to assure to be in the industry and keep playing the role that we are playing, then we will do like that. I think that I would like to turn the question and then ask the audience if, again, maybe the other phones are a little bit too cheap, right?
Okay, great question.
Why do people is able to buy a phone every year? Maybe those devices are a little bit too cheap price. Why do we need to fight in the supply chain to get workers to get a living wage and to make that the normal thing? Yeah. Those are the questions.
Speaking of your goals, speaking of raising labor wages, I know that in the past it was discussed if your Fairphone is really fair, or in terms of is it just conflict-free, or is it also fair in terms of ethical labor conditions? And as you presented, you have improved it with several measures. And what I would like to know is, do you think your Fairphone is as fair now as you envisioned it to be in the first place? Is it as fair as it can be?
Look, to create a fair phone, like a truly 100% fair phone, whoever is able to define that, I think we will need to create world peace first, just to make it clear. The supply chain of electronics is so highly complicated that there is no single product in the market that can say is the definitive 100% sustainable phone. So we are here to show what are things that are not working well in the industry and how we can change them. And that's what we will do. So if you ask me, are you where you wanted to be? No, because we will always strive for a more fair phone. We will always strive to show how things can be done a little bit better with more suppliers, with more money for a living wage, with better working conditions, with more materials integrated that are recycled or coming from fair mines. That's what we need to keep on doing, to keep that example part, so that other companies can also use what we are doing to improve themselves or to inspire their employees to do different as well.
Okay, thank you.
Wolfgang, you have another question for Miquel?
Maybe it's a bit more complicated for you to get access to the core components such as cameras or so. Is that true, or is it? Do you have the same conditions as a Samsung or whoever?
Depends on the component. Of course, every component is different. You don't have access to all the technology, of course, but that's also the case for many other much more famous brands that are also in the market. So yeah, that's the case. But again, this is a regular business as usual issue for many companies, right? Like the smaller your numbers are, the more you have to pay. Some MOQs, some minimum order quantities are a bit too high for you, so you need to negotiate to bring those down. Some components that you have available, maybe they don't fit exactly the technical specifications that you wanted, and you need to make a small compromise. It's a big puzzle, and that's our daily work, and we do it the best we can. Yeah.
Okay.
So Miquel, what do you think, or what do you reckon is basically the driver for the next step or the next growth for the Fairphone? Is it? I don't think it's technology. I think it's more work in terms of raising awareness. Do you agree there?
Well, I mean, we are working very actively on our brand awareness because we think that our message is important in the world. So definitely the work that we are doing internally is a lot on brand awareness indeed. So because all the awareness on the issues that comes together with our brands, that's the beauty of Fairphone. We've made the improvements in social and environmental, providing that example so core to our business that it's also very much related to how valued is our company, even to investors, for example. Fairphone would not be anything if it would not be with the projects that we have behind. And that's what drives our growth. That's what drives our access to certain investments, etc. It's all related to our social and environmental goals.
Just one last question. I wish we had more time again. The consortium that you mentioned with NGOs, what is your role there? Did you, as far as I understood, you founded this consortium?
It's not in this case. The example I used is the living wage call. So it's not a consortium. It's actually an open letter that we sent to the European Union. Okay. And then we convinced all these companies to actually sign this letter, which is a big thing, right? They are saying that as companies, they also find it important that there are living wage paid in their supply chains. So they are putting themselves under the magnifying glass as well. So in the future, they will also need to respond to what are the steps that they are taking to assure that there are living wage paid somewhere in the supply chain, or they are making efforts in that perspective. So that was a big thing. But there are other examples of consortia that I have not mentioned around, for example, Cobalt. So the Fair Cobalt Alliance, for example, where Tesla and other big companies are part of. That is also part of our work. But today I decided to highlight these other examples.
Sure. Very nice. Again, Miquel, keep up the great work. Very inspiring story. We'll hope to support you in the future, and say hi to your friends and co-workers in Amsterdam. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks. Thank you so much, and have fun in the rest of the conference.
Thank you, Miquel.
Bye.